The Bab, even in his earliest moments, was a child unlike any other. Born on October 20th, 1819, in the city of Shíráz in southwestern Persia, he would come to change the world. In the upper chamber of his uncle's house, he was brought into the world, his birth foretold by the vast expanse of time, by centuries that had long waited for such a soul. He was named Alí-Muhammad, after the Prophet Muhammad and his successor Ali. In this very house, a woman who would one day become his wife, Khadijah, was destined to be born as well. His family was distinguished, their lineage tracing back to the martyr Husayn, and ultimately to the Prophet Muhammad himself. His father, Muhammad-Ridá, though a cloth seller by trade, came from a noble family, and his mother, Fátimih, carried a grace and dignity befitting their heritage. The family's respect in the region was renowned, not for their wealth, but for their integrity, their purity of heart, and the steadfast devotion to the highest ideals of truth and righteousness. The people of the region loved and revered them. From the very start of his life, it was apparent that the Bab was not like other children. His mother often spoke of how he remained serene and unruffled, an angelic calmness surrounding him even as an infant. There was no crying, no signs of displeasure. He did not demand the usual attention of a child. Rather, his presence seemed to transcend earthly concerns. His mother at times would be overwhelmed with anxiety, unsure whether or not she should be concerned by his unusual tranquility. But the Bab, even in those first years, was deeply connected to the divine, and he exhibited a quiet certainty of his own purpose, a wisdom beyond his tender years. As a small child, the Bab's behavior captivated all who encountered him. Friends, strangers, everyone was struck by his extraordinary presence. Even at a few years of age, he would raise his hand to the heavens, reciting prayers that seemed far too mature for someone so young. In the stillness of the night, he would rise from his slumber to pray, his voice trembling with the devotion and sorrow of someone much older. There was a profound sense of otherworldliness about him, as though his spirit was ever attuned to the celestial realms. His moods would fluctuate between joy and sorrow, sometimes overwhelmed with rapture, at other times seeming lost in deep reflection. It is said that, even as a young child, he would speak truths about people's lives and events before they happened. Mothers-to-be would pass by him, and he would, with a quiet certainty, declare the gender of their unborn children. He would reveal to those around him events before they had occurred, offering glimpses of the future as if he were a seer. These gifts of insight were as natural to him as breathing, and yet he showed no pride in them. They were simply the result of his divine connection, an expression of the truth that poured from his very being. One incident in particular remains etched in the memory of those who knew him. The Bab had been sleeping at his uncle's house, resting in a space between his uncle and his father. Without warning, he rose from his rest, announcing that the roof of the steam chamber at the bathhouse had collapsed. 5 women and 1 child have been killed under the rubble, he said matter-of-factly. His uncle, alarmed and dismissive, urged him to go back to sleep, dismissing his words as nonsense. Yet the Bab insisted, "It is just as I say." Not long afterward, a frantic cry arose from the town. The bathhouse had collapsed, and people were trapped beneath the rubble. The number of casualties was not immediately clear. Some said 20, others 40. But the final count confirmed what the Bab had foretold. His words, as always, proved to be true. As the Bab grew older, his spiritual gifts became more pronounced. He began to have vivid dreams, one of which he shared with his family one morning. "Last night," he said, "I saw a large balance hanging in the air, suspended in a vast, infinite space. The revered sixth Imam was seated upon one of the plates of the balance. His weight was so great that his side touched the ground, while the other plate rose high in the air. Then an invisible hand lifted me up and placed me upon the other plate. My weight was so immense that it pulled my side of the balance to the ground, and the Imam's side was lifted high into the air." His father, hearing these words, recoiled in disbelief and anger. "You speak blasphemies," he exclaimed. "Do not utter such words again." But the Bab, with a calmness that only he could possess, remained silent. In his heart, he knew the truth, and he was not deterred by the misunderstandings of those around him. As word of the Bab's extraordinary nature spread, an astrologer was summoned to the house to provide guidance. After examining the Bab's birth date and making some calculations, the astrologer declared, "This child is protected from all evil influences. No harm will come to him." Then he wrote down protective charms and recited some prayers for the family. Upon the astrologer's departure, the Bab did something unexpected. He tore up the talismans and threw them out. "You make a great show of assistance," he told his father, "but I am the assistance." Despite his divine nature, the Bab's father felt it was time for him to receive a formal education. At the age of 4, his uncle took him to a school in Shíráz, a place of learning where children were taught by the finest scholars in the region. The schoolmaster was a tall, dignified man with a long beard, well regarded by the local clergy. His school was not for every child. Only those who had been raised with good manners and noble aspirations were accepted. The Bab's father, eager to secure his place, met with the schoolmaster in person, recounting the extraordinary nature of the child and his desire to have him educated in the ways of learning. The schoolmaster, intrigued, agreed to teach the Bab, though he had no idea what to expect. The Bab arrived at the school on the appointed day, a small tray of sweets and a student's Quran in hand. His fellow pupils, older and more experienced, sat around him, watching with curiosity. The schoolmaster began with the basics, the alphabet, but soon realized that the Bab was no ordinary child. When he left the room on business, the schoolmaster returned to hear someone reciting the Quran in a voice so beautiful and pure it brought tears to his eyes. To his astonishment, the other children pointed to the Bab. "It is he," they said. The schoolmaster, amazed, placed a Persian text in front of the Bab, who read it with perfect ease, and then tried him with Arabic. The results were the same. It was not long before the schoolmaster asked the Bab to read the Quran, and the child smiled and agreed. But when asked to recite a verse, the Bab paused. "Who is he in this verse?" he asked, pointing to the words. "He is the deliverer, the all-knowing." The schoolmaster, thinking it a child's innocent question, explained that he referred to God, and that it was not for a child to ponder such mysteries. But the Bab, ever profound, replied, "I am the deliverer, the all-knowing." The schoolmaster, startled by these words, grew angry and ordered him to be silent. Yet the Bab, undeterred, continued to speak. Despite the tensions in the classroom, the Bab's thirst for knowledge could not be quelled. He began to demonstrate an understanding of the divine that far surpassed that of any of his peers, and his beauty of spirit and character continued to captivate all who encountered him. His words were like light, illuminating the hearts of those around him, and his silent prayers, deep and profound, filled the hearts of the faithful with awe and wonder. And so, the story of the Bab, the child whose presence was a divine revelation, continued to unfold, a story of purity, knowledge, and a love for God that would change the world forever.